No cross.
Well, before we go there, thanks yesterday to Carol Spangler Vaughn. She's a PhD. She came in for MediVet. What they're doing is they're putting stem cells into pets, and eventually it's coming into humans. So right here in Hawaii, if your pet's got issue, they'll take the stem cells out through the fat, collect fat, and then get the stem cells, inject it right back into your pet, and it's amazing what's happening with that. And this is just, technology is going to kick our old If you can live long enough, you'll never die, basically. For them to get this up to speed. And she had some folks join this, good stuff. Okay, and then of course tomorrow Wes Wada will be in. Now Wes Wada has been a host of my show. He's been on my show several occasions. I found him first. Hawaii Energy just nominated him most energy efficient guy in the state. Excuse me. I hate when that happens. And I think they gave him a reusable shopping bag for his efforts. Bottom line, Wes will be in tomorrow to talk about such things as that. We'll be joined by a new wind product, the energy ball, etc. I tell you what, disease grips, today's paper, disease grips some of Kauai's coral reefs, scientists warn. Last night on the news, same story. It's my story that I broke a while back, and I'm the fellow that's been having Terry Lilly as my series. He's co-hosting a series on this disease out of Kauai. Terry's coming back next week on the 16th. Terry, if you're listening, we've moved you to the 16th from the 15th. All right, that's pretty much it for right now. And then we're going to be talking GMO. And then Brant, Kelsey, do you mind if I read a few letters out of the newspaper to kind of set this up, what the public's inputs have been to this?
Go ahead on.
Okay, so for instance, yesterday I was trying to get a hold of this guy through the telephone book, Roy Matsuura from Waikiki. He responded to this by our senator, Russel Rudderman out of Puna. Russell's our senator, and he also has 3 health food stores on the Big Island. Been doing that for a long time, 20 years or more. Says here, perils of genetically modified organism foods seem pretty obvious. The Centers for Disease Controls find a 50% increase in children's food allergies since the late 90s. No explanation has been found. That is a fact. Curiously, ingredients from the GMO organisms began to permeate our food supply at the same time these allergies started going. They contain proteins that our bodies have never encountered in our evolutionary history. I think that's the key to this.
Well, the glyphosate is the mechanism by which makes it effective, is that in the plant, it attacks the ability of the plant, the weed, as it were, to metabolize and use proteins, and therein the weed dies.
Okay, so in its efforts to be a better plant regarding weeds, it's having the same effect on the human body. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what the problem becomes is that initially it wasn't expected that these type of protein disabling organisms would be able to be transplanted or transferred from men and plants. They weren't interchangeable, as it were. But it's been found that, in fact, what has happened is that this ability to, in effect, kill the ability to process certain proteins has transferred into man. We have a lot of friendly bacteria and so forth, and it's killing the bacteria in our gut.
There's just so much common sense here, and then the bottom line being that if you put a new organism into your body, which has been used to processing things for millions of years of evolution, suddenly it gets a brand new one, doesn't know what to do with it, and you're going to have a metamorphosis inside your own body, and we don't know what that will lead to. Is that the point that they're making?
What most people don't understand is that we have about 2 pounds of friendly bacteria that is contained in our intestine and our stomach, and that helps to break down and metabolize proteins and so forth and so on. The genetically engineered foods are actually compromising our ability to do that, and in effect compromising our immunological system, the ability to ward off disease.
According to you, but according to Monsanto, they just put an article in the newspaper. It says here, the question is, are foods from GMOs safe? And the answer is, it's a great question, and we've asked about it a lot. great food matters to all of us. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And GMO foods are just as safe as any other type of food. See what the scientists have to say. And then they go on to quote all these different people who say no adverse health effects, National Academy of Science, no effects on human health has been shown, World Health Organization, no scientific evidence associating GMOs with a higher risk, European Commission. It says here, bioengineered foods have been consumed for close to 20 years. That's what Rudderman was saying. And during that time, no overt consequences on human health have been reported. Okay, well that's what they say. Now let's get down to the, and then by the way, this goofball writes a letter saying, Rudderman is, how could you dare publish the irresponsible letter from Rudderman? Perhaps this politician should share his GMO observations with scientists in the world. I'm sure they would appreciate his insight. Public comments like this without any rational basis, scientific basis, make one wonder how we can take a discussion seriously. With that in mind, and with that stage set of where the public is and where they're fluttering about from side to side on this, you give us a 101 right now, and you help set the stage, would you, Mr. Brant, Kelsey, independent research analyst, on what's happening, Ground Zero, Hawaii, GMO companies, the Big Five. Give us, as short as possible, the quick version of what's happening here.
Well, right now Hawaii has been set up as to we are the Petri Dish for all experimentation of GMOs. We have Bayer, Monsanto, Syngenta, Dow, DuPont, and the only they are working hand in hand with the Kamehameha schools in Bishop Estate. They have worked their way into the University of Hawaii, and they are financing research. You'll remember a few years ago they wanted to actually genetically modify the taro.
The taro, yep, they were shut down on that as the taro was too sacrilegious to the Hawaiian religion.
Well, not sacrilegious, but it was sacred.
It's their family.
It's a sacred food. So the only prophylactic that we've had so far with protections from some of the usurpations that Monsanto and the various other GMO, GE, feed, agriculture, herbicide producing entities has been actually the farmers of Hawaii have been the ones that have gotten together and have actually taken these cases to court to stop them because the cross-pollinating their fields with Terminator seeds, and I mean it's a very, 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 very widespread and very complicated problem.
Okay, let's look at it this way. Biggest employer on Molokai, GMO, Monsanto. And then the most farmland being farmed in Hawaii, probably a GMO farm.
It's 50,000 acres, 60,000 acres, all in conjunction with Bishop Estate.
How many people do you feel don't understand that this food will never reach the table in Hawaii?
I think that the deal is in Hawaii is that really the GMOs. If you just reflect on what happened at the legislative session, this most recent one, where mothers gathered together to just request simple labeling of GMO foods, the right to just label a food.
Right.
If these foods are so great, and if they're so safe,
and benign,
and if Monsanto is so confident that these are 100% safe and effective, why not label them? Why not allow the opportunity for every citizen in Hawaii, mothers and children, the keiki, to know what they're eating?
Let's take another left-hand
on that
turn.
note, just 10 years ago, it was the position of Monsanto that people, of course, had the right to know. They were all behind labeling, but things have changed.
All right, let's look at what things have changed. For instance, you called Hawaii and our state a Petri dish. Why is that? I don't think people really understand. These GMO farms are basically scientific works in progress. They have no idea where they're going to end up because they're always changing the formula to see what happens.
Well, that's one of the problems because they don't know what the end result is going to be.
Right.
And when you start taking seeds and you start giving them the characteristics of animals,
Right. There's
Okay.
mixing humans with corn, jellyfish with corn, spiders with pig.
they're mixing plant DNA with animal DNA.
Right.
Okay, and they're not only doing this in terms of food, but they're also doing this in terms of vaccine research. And there's a case before Ezra right now here in Hawaii because these people have secret farms. Monsanto actually has secret farms where they're doing these experiments
Here in Hawaii,
here in Hawaii.
Kunia, for instance.
Kunia, for instance. And what's happening is through the winds, through the bees,
Right.
cross-pollination.
All right.
So they're messing, you know what I mean?
Let me make it simple for super people like me, and the rest of you listening, if I may. Okay, here's how it works. You've got a scientific experiment. In order to bring a GMO crop to fruition, you have to have 10 cycles of planting because you're changing it every time. That's why they like Hawaii. They can get 3 crops in a year as opposed to the mainland. Of course, they spray it with a cocktail of poisons of all kinds, and they can get 10 years of poison in 3.5 years here in Hawaii. That's going into our systems. Now, they're creating new organisms. And as all the scientists have said, including the guy here, Terry Lilly, on the reef disease in Kauai, when you introduce a new organism, bacteria changes to meet it. It was never there before. So you've created a new organism. Now you've created a new a morphine of a bacteria in order to deal with it.
A pathogen.
Okay, and what
Actually-
has been said in simple terms is that our entire ecosystem has already been changed because of the introduction of these things. And nobody knows where it's going. Nobody knows if it's good. Now we've got people
It's
noticing.
destroying reef. Okay, it's destroying
Possibly.
groundwater. Well, it's the most toxic herbicide on the planet. They use something in the neighborhood of 90 million pounds of it.
We're talking atrazine, is that what it's called?
Well, you got glyphosate, and you have atrazine, and you have the one that they just did it's actually been the
One banned in the European Union.
it's a nicotinoid, something like that. Anyway, that one has just been peer reviewed, and that one has been stopped. Okay.
All right, now let me ask you, how many countries do not allow GMO
I
at all?
don't know exactly how
30,
many countries,
50, something like
but
that?
recombinant growth, bovine, recombinant GMO growth hormone. That's banned in Europe entirely. We're the only country that.
Syngenta's big here, and in fact, there was an article in the paper about them moving most of their personnel and their labs to the Kauai. They're in Kunia. Not allowed to even operate in their own country where they're based, which is Switzerland. European Union just came out and banned the pesticides that these guys are so favored of due to the fact that they fear it's wiping out the bees' ability to find each other, find their way home. And since 7 out of 10 of man's plants that feed the earth require bees to pollinate.
They've already attributed the one herbicide directly to CCD, the collapse of the bee.
Of course, that was a huge issue, still is here in Hawaii, who's a lot of beekeepers that I've had on this show, their bee farms are up in Kunia.
Well, not only that, but these glyphosates now, the whole principle behind them was that in the big picture, you would be using less pesticide. These are so efficient and so effective, but what has invariably occurred is that the weeds have developed an immunity to it, and now it requires 10 to 12% more in order to eradicate the weeds.
And let's just put it right to what people already do understand. The flesh-eating staph diseases didn't used to be there, but when we started dosing them with antibiotics to the point, they morphed. They changed. They created a new organism, a new staph, which is resistant. And now pretty soon, don't be in the wrong place or the wrong time, and you'll get one of these things, and it'll eat you up and it'll kill you. No way to stop it.
Listeria.
Listeria. Okay, let's go this way. Here's 2 folks that the Honolulu Advert gave 2/3 of an entire page in the editorial world said in support of GMOs, and they had these 2 folks. And this guy's professor of emeritus, University of Illinois, and the woman partner with Grande Prairie Farms in Dixon. She's a farmer. And the biotech plays an important role in protecting Hawaii food. That was this guy's. And I read the entire article, 3 columns. You know what it said? Nothing. It said absolutely Nothing. I have never, they make fun of this on Saturday Night Live, right? Where the politician gets up there and says nothing. He talks, but he's not saying anything. This is exactly what has happened in this thing. He never gives one example. He never gives one fact. It's just good. And the same thing happened with this woman. It's just good. It's not bad. We can't tell you why it's good, because let's review. Brant, Kelsey, independent research analyst. How many more millions of people worldwide is the fact that we've got GMO food feeding today? What do you know about that?
Hit me again with that one.
GMO, from what I was told in the propaganda I first heard, we were going to have a 40-pound watermelon and a 10-pound piece of corn, and we were going to take all these poor people out of poverty and starvation, and these little children and Africans, little flies all over their eyes. These kids were going to get fed because the GMO people were here to save us.
Well, there have been farmers across the world that have bought into that propaganda. Perfect example is in India, where they were promised that these genetically engineered seeds would provide them with bonus crops, that their yields would exceed yields that they had ever seen before. And what invariably happened is the crops did not produce. And since 1997, more than 200,000 farmers in India have committed suicide as a result of the failings. And then one of the things that you find that when you deal with a specifically engineered seed for a specific crop, once you have saturated the soil with these intensely powerful herbicides, nothing will grow there again. Nothing
it's
will grow
designed for that
again.
GMO device, which has implanted a resistance to herbicide.
Basically, what you've done is you are soaking these seeds. It's really cool for the farmer, because it makes things real simple for the partner. You got the magic seed, okay, and you can just saturate the earth. You don't have to worry about insects. You don't have to worry about weeds, okay, but you've got this seed that's impervious to all of these toxic devices that you're using to control your crop.
Right.
And what invariably happens is that these are, once you've done this, you leave the soil fallow.
Okay.
If it doesn't produce, then you're messed up. You can't just go to another crop.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so first of all, if we're a GMO and we're going to save the world and feed the hungry and make everything better, well, why does it not make sense to all of us? Because these guys are a corporation, and these corporations do one thing: they corner markets, they make money, and these guys have looked at food, whereas you see other people trying to corner this market and that market, whether it be touchscreen, whether it be IT, software, silicon, you name it, oil, gas. These guys want to corner the food market. Pretty simple. Since
that's the end game.
Everybody needs it. That would be a good thing to be in the business.
Well, it's not only that, but there's also an aspect of it where it is about weaponizing food. Because with the advent of the Terminator seed, which is a seed that you sell to a developing country, if you have any issues with that person, every year they have to come back to you, and
because they can't propagate that seed.
That seed
There's
will not propagate.
It's a single growth seed, no reproduction.
None whatsoever. And so what happens is that the bankers get together, you're not paying your bills, all of a sudden you're cut off. We don't have to send ships to embargo you. We don't have to prevent food from being flown in. It's just all we do, you have a seed that's turned off. You can't grow food anymore. In '84, Kissinger said, with energy we control continents, with food we control people.
So again, these corporations got together.
It has an end game to it.
What the first thing they did? Did they not buy all the seed outlets, seed companies?
Just most recently, they call it, what Monsanto calls it is brown bag seed, which in effect, brown bag seed is progeny seed. It's the seed that we've had around for millions and millions of years.
Right.
Okay.
Where you keep some of your crop, you don't eat it, you don't send it to
it's
market.
not adulterated.
You keep it for next year's planting.
Exactly. And by the last count, Monsanto currently sits on top and owns 90% of all the progeny seed on the planet, together with the Gates Foundation and with petrochemical companies, because you have to remember these Roundups, these herbicides,
Right.
those are all petrochemicals. So what you have already is you have a scenario where energy is already controlled, okay? And now you have Monsanto in bed with the energy
gotta love it.
corporations
To
controlling food.
And here's the point and example. And you can see why it was easier to control energy, because it takes billions to go out and find oil and drill it and supply it. But when it came to food, all the farmers could grow it. All the little squares in Kansas and Ohio, your old grandma in her backyard, people can grow their own food. It was very difficult, the business plan to control
In some
food.
areas, in some parts of Europe right now, there's legislation being proposed to prevent people from actually owning seed or having a garden.
Good grief, it's just way out there. Bottom line, that's why I can see how these food, the guys who wanted to monopolize the food industry, how it took them so long, because it wasn't just a matter of, oh, we got more money than you do, we'll go drill oil. It was about, how do I control all these individual farmers? I know, I'll control them through their seeds.
Well, not only do they control them through their seed, but even if you happen to be a farmer that doesn't ascribe to the GMO philosophy, and somehow or another your plants get pollinated by their seed, they will actually attach you. They will take you to court for infringing upon their patent.
And they've won in court. I don't know how.
They win in court because their pockets are so deep that no small farmer can withstand the legal onslaught.
So let's make sure people understand.
So it's a war of attrition to bankrupt the farmer.
And of course, this is what was a complaint anywhere where these people have operated, that their pollens are, and not to mention, of course, people are ingesting their herbicides and pesticides every day on Kauai here. They're dust-laden pesticides blowing in your home, in your children's lungs, etc.
And destroying the reef, and creating new anomalies in the ocean ecosystem. Absolutely, it's like the most criminal thing that you can imagine. You know, it's like if you were to, my feeling about it, my personal feeling about it is that if corporations are people, Monsanto is a sociopath. They've done nothing but pollute and poison since their inception in 1902. Agent Orange, PCBs, aspartame, all of these things. And they have become so enormous because they work in conjunction with government agencies, the military-industrial complex, okay? Because it's a weapon. Food is a weapon. We can use it as a weapon. Okay, it's just as powerful as a nuclear bomb. You keep the infrastructure alive. We just kill the people. We starve them out. Okay, and you just have to really start thinking about these things in terms of the big picture. Because food, you know, even with energy, even though we require it here in Hawaii, yeah, we can get by. But food we cannot get by with.
Okay, it's about an education, and that's why this thing didn't get through the ledge. First of all, the legislators are uneducated. I don't see them washing us down the toilet for the manini amount of money these guys will generically give them. So our legislatures.
But you have to keep in mind that even though you may look at the balance sheet and you may say, oh, so and so got this and so got that, you have to understand that where the real payoff comes is in party financing, campaign financing, okay, and the big picture is without term limits, it's just like hiring a lobbyist who will do your bidding for decade after decade.
All right, hang on. Let's not change the subject too much, even though it is the same.
I know, the same subject, man. It all boils down.
Here's what we're up against. Here's an article or a letter to the editor the other day. GMOs can ease food shortages. Can? Well, if they can, why haven't they? But let's go on. The issue is becoming ridiculous, according to this.
May have good intentions, but display scientific ignorance. There's nothing mysterious or evil about GMO foods. They're simply food products that have been modified to enhance size, taste, economy to the consumer. Modification is as ancient as mankind, to be sure. To be using chemicals and poisons is debatable, but that is not the issue here. It's not. Another reader said doctors have had to treat patients. We would welcome such. With our abundance of food in general, GMO seems mostly a matter of economics and convenience. But for countries where starvation and shortages are common, GMO foods can be life-saving. There are many more important issues to deal with. I called this guy up. I found him in the book. He's a doctor. I was hoping he was a nutritionist. No, he's a surgical optical surgeon. You know what he told me? Well, I really don't know that much about it. And I'm like, why'd you write an editor the letter? Blah, blah. You know? But that's what we're up against. This type of an uneducated public, stupid people. I don't know about this guy, how stupid he is, but obviously we got so many stupid people out there, we actually go to war, kill each other. And then we got this other guy that, did his little thing. Why should Senator Rudderman, where is that? Why, here it is. Okay, so this letter to the editor, a couple days after Rudderman says, I can't believe they would print such an irresponsible letter from Senator Rudderman. Perhaps this local politician should share his observations with the scientists of the world. I'm sure they would appreciate his insight. In other words, Rudderman's a dummy. Public comments like this without rational scientific debate make one wonder how we can take this discussion seriously. Ray Matsuura, like he can't find him in the phone book. With that in mind, I'd like to welcome Senator Russel Rudderman to the show. Aloha, Russel.
Thank you, Jeff. That's quite an introduction.
Called you stupid.
I heard you, I heard what you said.
I know you got thick skin, and thanks for calling in and trying to shed some light on this. By the way, would you agree with me that it's all a matter of education, that anyone educated on this subject is going to solve this problem quite quickly?
Well, if they're exposed to the information that most of the rest of the world is exposed to with regard to the actual science that has been done on GMOs, then we would all exercise a lot more caution than we do now. But that science has been very heavily suppressed in this country because of the control Monsanto has over the FDA. And anyone who is exposed to some of the actual information would have great concern, and I'm sure we would have labeling at the least in...
Well, by the way, you're a senator. You just came out of Ledge. You're out of Puna. You've got 3 health food establishments, stores and whatnot, if I'm not mistaken. You've had that going on for, 15 years, 20 years?
We just celebrated our 15th birthday last week.
All right, so you got a background in this and food issues. Do you think that the very idea that these people are creating new organisms, in other words, somebody from Kauai says to me that was Kauai, GMO-free Kauai. They said, how can they even call it corn? Because technically it's not corn, but somehow they get to call it corn. Let me ask you, Russell, do you think anybody could understand that if we're creating a new organism and that the ecosystem must react to that through a bacterial morph and, evolution of bacteria, for instance, in order to break this stuff down? Do you think most people would think that perhaps more studies should be done on this stuff before we just start experimenting in the wide open plains of Hawaii?
Well, I agree with most of what you just said. I'm not sure if I got the first part about, but I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I share your concern about GMOs on every level. And by the way, besides being in the massive food business, I do have a degree in biology, and I
like that.
My emphasis was in genetics. So
thank you for bringing that.
I'm not an anti-Luddite or anti-science or technology, by the way. A few minutes ago you were talking about one of the letter writers that said plant breeding's been going on for millennia.
Could you help explain the difference between what's going on in the GMO world and what's going on with trying to, turn your roses both red and white?
Sure. That's the first thing that needs to be understood, in that, for thousands of years we may have been breeding plants for desirable traits, but we've been following the laws of nature. The most fundamental law of nature in this regard is our system of DNA and gene transfer. And the big rule is genes get exchanged within a species. That's been the inviolable rule throughout our evolution. And that's what plant breeding works with. It works with nature. Whereas genetic modification, or genetic mutilation, as I like to call it, is fundamentally violating that rule of nature, the rule of nature that created us and all the life that we know. Well, GMOs are being reckless with that rule by introducing DNA from other species.
Right. And let's just get it out there. They're mixing human DNA with plant DNA.
Animal DNA.
Animal DNA with other animals.
Yeah, most typically it's bacterial or viral DNA with plants. I mean, that's what's been mostly done so far.
And what about the idea that Hawaii's got more open-air acreage experimentation than anywhere else in the world? How the heck are we the chosen ones that we get to be unknowingly part of their experiment It's most specifically the people who live across the street from the fields.
Well, I think Hawaii looked really attractive to them because of our several growing seasons, and but they also, I think this could have happened elsewhere, but they were very effective at infiltrating our system of
We were
government.
an easy takeover.
Infiltrating our system.
And by the way, right now they have about 1/5 of Oahu's prime agriculture land being used for products that do not feed Hawaii and are being used to develop a type of agriculture that's about 100 times more pesticide intensive than any other.
100 times more pesticide intensive. And then again, are politicians just that stupid, or are they that greedy to understand that it's a negative, but they take their money and let it fly under the radar for as long as they can?
Well, I won't use either of those words exactly, Jackie.
Oh, sorry, Senator.
But I will say that there's a little bit of both factors at work, which is that people believe what they've learned. And if what you've learned has been carefully filtered through one channel, then that's all you know, and you will tend to believe that. There's also the fact, I forget whose great quote it was, it's hard to get someone to believe something that his paycheck pays him not to believe.
How about this? Any advice? Because I'm, just sitting here talking about it's not winding my clock. I want to know how we can get people engaged. What's your advice to folks to become engaged?
Well, my first step would be to go to a couple of websites or Facebook pages. And the website would be Organic Consumers Association or the Institute for Responsible Technology.
It's interesting. My guest yesterday, she was here for the stem cell thing. She's like, we were off there, she said, I don't give my kids any GMO products. I'm not giving them that crap. I had just come from a solar pitch that day, the 75-year-old woman telling me she told her daughter not to be eating that stuff because it'll make her sterile in the future. This woman, some people get it.
A lot of people are getting it, Jeff, and actually that's the really good news is, there are maybe 10 times more people involved in this issue than there were even 1 year ago. It's just coming to a mass awareness, and it's really fantastic. And I think we're reaching a tipping point really fast here that the dam's going to break. There are 60 countries that either require labeling or ban GMOs outright. And yet here we have this one letter saying, Rudderman, show me your science. Well, that science is out there in the world.
Oh, my God.
And more people, in this country are becoming very concerned with the health consequences.
Well, how about this? We're the only guys that have a atrazine manufacturing plant on the Garden Island, right? They're manufacturing this stuff, which is banned all over the world in many places. And we are the lucky ones on Kauai, those guys that get to have a factory that makes it. We get to add it to our Roundup and spray it. And it's a crime. And then your suggestion was get an education. Is that correct?
Well, yes. I mean, that's where you can get some of your facts. Because one of the things one of the things we keep hearing is show me the science, show me the science. Well, the science is out there, and it's easy to find. And the two websites I mentioned are great sources. That's why I started with that. So if someone questions your science, it's there, and there's a lot of health-based, rigorous scientific double-blind studies. And then the next step is to get involved with pages like GMO Free Hawaii or contacting your state and county legislators about it. And that's very important that our state legislators who did not let the GMO bill. Huh?
Didn't they just even they didn't even hear it. They tabled it. They called the women that came down to the legislature, they called them radicals and
well, that kind of thing will happen. But one interesting thing is that this year GMO bills got a lot farther than they ever did before.